This happened to me almost 8 years ago, and I've never really stopped thinking about it. I was in my early 20s then, still young, still a little reckless, and camping deep in the wilderness of Upper Idaho. I wouldn't say I was a pro camper, but I'd gone on enough long hikes to know what I was doing. That region, though, was serious business. It wasn't your average weekend campsite. The forests up there were dense, the air sharp and quiet, and the wildlife abundant. Black bears, grizzlies. You had to be smart, stay alert, and carry the right gear. That alone scared off most casual hikers, which I honestly preferred. Most of the Upper Idaho campsites were remote and rarely crowded. Still, I tended to avoid even the popular ones. I liked being alone out there. The silence, the distance from everything. So for this trip, I picked a lesser-known trail just outside a big mountain range. It wasn't one of those scenic Instagram routes. It cut through forest and hill, running along the base of the mountains before opening up into a quiet clearing with a beautiful view of the range. The nearest known trail was about 3 miles away. It led to a small lake that probably had a few tourists or fishermen hanging around. That was reason enough for me to skip it. Turned out I was right. The entire hike there, I didn't see a single person. The path looked unused, half reclaimed by nature, and when I finally reached the clearing, it was completely empty. Perfect. I set up my tent at the far side of the clearing, gathered some big stones to make a fire pit, and started preparing camp. The sun was still a few hours from setting, so I took my time, organizing my gear, checking the map, and thinking about what trail I'd take in the morning. When the light began to fade, I built up a small fire. The sound of the crackling wood filled the stillness around me. I roasted a few marshmallows and laid back, staring up at the sky. The stars out there were unbelievable, the kind of thing that makes you forget there's a world beyond the tree line. The valley was silent, except for a soft wind moving through the trees and the occasional distant call of some animal. It was one of those rare, perfect moments, until I heard it. A crunch, then another. Leaves shifting under deliberate footsteps. It wasn't an animal. Too steady, too human. My head shot toward the sound, heart starting to beat faster. The steps grew louder, slow but purposeful, until I could make out the faint shape of a person emerging from the shadows at the edge of my camp. It was a man. The firelight flickered across him, but the shadows distorted his features. All I could see was a camping backpack strapped to his shoulders and a dim outline of his face. He stopped right at the edge of the light and just stared. Before I could even speak, he said softly, almost whispering, "Sorry." Then he turned around and walked back into the darkness. That was it. The way he said it, though, that quiet, almost apologetic tone, it didn't sound right. He wasn't just being polite. He sounded afraid. I sat there frozen for a while, just watching the dark trees where he disappeared. What was he even sorry for? It didn't make sense. Maybe he was lost, looking for a campsite, realized someone else was there, and decided to move on. That had to be it. Still, something about the encounter felt off. I tried to shake it off. After a few minutes, the forest settled back into silence. The crackling fire and distant night sounds filled the space again, and slowly, my nerves calmed. Maybe he just took a wrong turn. I went back to stargazing, trying to enjoy the quiet again, though that weird, hushed sorry echoed in my head more than I wanted it to. Several hours passed, or at least it felt that way. The night had settled in completely now, and the stars had faded behind a blanket of drifting clouds. The bright, open sky I'd been staring at earlier was gone, replaced with a heavy, moonless dark. The fire had burned down to glowing embers, and the forest was silent again, the kind of silence that presses against your ears. I wasn't exactly tired yet, but I was content, relaxed enough to just sit by the fire and let my thoughts wander. I figured I'd stay up another hour or so, maybe until the flames died out completely. Then I heard it again. Footsteps. This time they were faster, heavier. They came from the same direction as before, from deep within the woods where that man had disappeared. I stood up immediately, peering into the darkness. The sound grew louder, crunching through the leaves and twigs, closing in on my camp fast. And then, out of the darkness, he came running into the faint circle of firelight. It was the same man. I could tell by his frame, his backpack, the same one I'd seen earlier. But now he looked different, disheveled, scared. His hair was messy and stuck to his forehead, his beard uneven and scruffy, his face streaked with dirt. Even from a few steps away, I could see his eyes, wide, darting around like he was searching for something. His clothes were rumpled, and his breathing came in short, quick bursts. I froze where I stood, unsure what to say. "Hey, are you okay?" I finally asked. "You probably should have made it to your campsite by now." "It's pretty late." He didn't answer right away. He just stood there, chest heaving, staring past me, not at me, but over my shoulder, like there was something behind me that had his full attention. Then his gaze flicked back to me, nervous and sharp. "You lost?" I tried again, keeping my voice calm. "Maybe I can help. I've got a radio." He interrupted softly, his voice low and uneasy. "No, I'm fine," but he didn't sound fine. Every few seconds, his eyes darted back to that same spot behind me. It was quick, just a glance, but I could tell whatever he was seeing, or thought he was seeing, was terrifying him. I took a careful step forward. "Listen, man, you look shaken up. I can help you out, give you some water, food, whatever you need." He suddenly fixed his eyes on me, more intensely than before. His voice came out almost accusing. "You're camping here right now?" he asked. Yeah," I said slowly. "Why?" That question hit me weird. The tone, the way he said it. It wasn't curiosity. It was suspicion. Just camping," I said. "I've been hiking most of the day. Figured I'd rest here overnight." His eyes darted to my right again, just for a second, then back at me. I could feel the hairs on my arms standing up. Whatever was going through this guy's mind, it wasn't good. "Is it just you here?" he asked quietly. "Are you alone?" I hesitated. My mouth opened, but no words came out. Then he added, almost trembling, "Where are the others?" Now my pulse was pounding. "What others?" I asked. He stared at me like he didn't believe me, like I was lying. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Have you been following me?" My throat went dry. "No," I said quickly. "I don't even know who you are." But he didn't look convinced. His eyes flicked over my shoulder again, and this time, they stayed there. His face went pale, his mouth slightly open. Whatever he saw froze him. Then, in a voice barely audible, he asked, "Then why are you with her?" My heart stopped. I turned around instantly, my flashlight beam sweeping through the darkness. But there was nothing there, just trees, shadows, and the faint orange glow of the dying firelight. I spun back toward the man, but he was already backing away, still staring into the dark behind me, his eyes wide with pure terror. And then, without another word, he turned and ran. Not down the trail, not toward safety. He bolted deeper into the woods, straight into the black, unmarked forest, and within seconds, he was gone. The sound of his footsteps vanished almost as quickly as they came. For a long time after he disappeared, I just stood there, frozen. The woods were completely silent again, but it wasn't peaceful anymore. It was the kind of silence that feels alive, like the trees themselves are holding their breath. The shadows around me suddenly felt closer, darker. I turned my flashlight in every direction, scanning between the trunks, trying to catch any hint of movement. Nothing. No sound, no voice, just the faint crackling of my fire burning itself out. But I couldn't stop replaying his last words in my head. Then why are you with her? Every time I looked over my shoulder, I half expected to see someone standing there. A woman, a shape, something. But there was nothing. I told myself I was imagining it, that the guy was clearly in bad shape and probably delusional. But the fear I felt in that moment was real. It didn't matter how much I tried to rationalize it. My instincts were screaming at me to leave. I started packing up as fast as I could, tossing things into my bag without caring about organization. Every little sound, the wind, a snapping twig, the whisper of leaves, made my chest tighten. My flashlight beam felt weak, like it could barely hold back the dark. Once everything was packed, I kicked dirt over the fire and took off down the trail. Even though I knew the man had run the other direction, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone anymore. Every few steps, I'd look back. My light would sweep over the empty woods, nothing there, and I'd force myself to keep walking. But every now and then, I'd swear I heard another set of footsteps behind me. Not close, but steady, slow, following. I didn't stop to check. I just walked faster, then faster still, until it turned into a full-on hike that bordered on a sprint. The moment I saw the faint glow of my car's reflectors at the edge of the lot, I felt like I could finally breathe again. I threw my stuff into the back seat, slammed the door, and drove. I don't think I even turned the headlights on for the first few seconds. I just wanted distance between me and those woods. The next morning, after I'd calmed down a bit, I couldn't stop thinking about him. No matter how strange he'd acted, he was still out there somewhere, maybe lost, maybe injured, maybe worse. So I drove to the nearest ranger station and told them everything. They took it seriously, wrote down the details, even sent someone to check the area. I didn't hear much back after that, but I made a follow-up call a week later. The ranger told me they didn't find anyone. No campsite, no tracks, nothing. It was like he'd just vanished. I've replayed that night in my head countless times. The simplest explanation is that it was just another hiker or someone living off the grid, cautious and unsure about me. But the way they moved, the sudden footsteps, the timing, that pause when I looked up, felt deliberate, like they knew I was awake. Whatever it was, it reminded me that even the most beautiful, remote places can hide something unexpected. And years later, I still can't shake the image of that dark figure watching from below. This happened back in 2015. I decided to take a solo road trip a few hours away from where I lived. There was a forest out there that I'd been wanting to explore for a while. Somewhere deep in those woods was an old, abandoned fire lookout. It was technically off-limits, unsafe and unstable, but that kind of made it more intriguing. I'd read a few old posts online about people visiting it, though none were recent. The latest one I could find was from about 3 years earlier, which meant I had no idea what kind of shape the place would be in now. Still, I packed up for a 2-day trip and went anyway. There wasn't a real parking area, just a small ditch off the side of the road where I could leave my car. I grabbed my backpack, locked the doors, and started my hike into the woods. There wasn't much of a trail to follow, so I relied mostly on my handheld GPS. The hike was supposed to be around 4 or 5 hours, cutting through dense forest and rough terrain. The deeper I got, the more isolated it felt. The air was heavy, the trees thick, and it was obvious no one had been through there in a long time. By the time I finally saw the fire lookout peeking out above the trees, I was exhausted. But when I got closer, I was surprised to see it was still standing. Weathered, paint peeling, but solid. I gave the support beams a few shoves to test them, and they didn't budge. So I climbed the ladder. It was metal and creaked with every step, but it held. At the top, I stopped and just took in the view. From up there, you could see everything, endless forest in every direction. No towns, no lights, no roads. Just wilderness. Inside, the lookout was small, maybe the size of a small bedroom. There was a broken-down bed in one corner, a rotted wooden desk in another, and windows along every wall. It smelled like damp wood and dust. I unpacked, rolled out my mattress, set up my sleeping bag, and made dinner on my little camping stove. By the time the sun started setting, I sat out on the ledge and watched it disappear behind the mountains. It was honestly one of the most peaceful things I'd ever seen. Then the darkness came fast. The clouds rolled in, covering the moon and stars, leaving me in near pitch black. I stayed out on the ledge anyway, enjoying the quiet, until I noticed something below me. A light. It was faint, moving between the trees, maybe a few 100 feet out. But it wasn't a flashlight. The glow was orange, flickering, like a fire or a torch. At first, I thought it might be campers, but there weren't supposed to be any around here. Not without a serious hike, and not at night. Still, I watched it for a while, trying to make sense of it. The light drifted through the trees for maybe a minute or two, then slipped behind something and disappeared completely. For the next half hour, I didn't see it again. I sat there, staring into the dark, telling myself it was probably just someone passing through. Eventually, the wind picked up, and the chill pushed me to head inside. But before I did, I looked down one last time and froze. Someone was standing at the bottom of the tower. They were in the open space between the woods and the lookout, completely still, looking straight up at me. I couldn't make out their face, just a dark figure against the grass. "Hello?" I called out. No answer. They didn't move, not even a step, just stood there watching. After what felt like 10 or 15 seconds, they slowly lifted one hand, like they were waving or signaling something, and then, without a word, turned and walked back into the woods. No light, no sound, just gone. I stood there a while longer, trying to calm myself down. I told myself it was probably just another hiker who got turned around and saw the tower light from afar. Maybe they were hoping to crash there for the night and saw me instead. It was strange, sure, but not impossible. Eventually, I went back inside. The wind rattled the old windows, the wooden floor creaked with every gust, and it was hard to fall asleep, but I must have drifted off at some point. Then I woke up. It was still pitch dark, The wind had completely died down. For a second, I couldn't tell what had woken me, until I heard it. A slow, metallic creak. The ladder. I sat up fast, listening. The sound came again, the distinct squeak of metal hinges shifting under weight. Someone was climbing up. My chest tightened as I slowly got out of my sleeping bag. I held my breath, listening to each faint step echo through the structure. They were careful, but not quiet enough. I couldn't see anything out the windows. It was too dark, but the sounds were getting closer. Whoever it was, they were near the top. I grabbed my backpack. For some reason, that was my first instinct, and stepped out onto the ledge. The air was freezing, the silence heavy. The creaking suddenly stopped. I waited, staring at the edge of the platform where the ladder ended. Nothing. I slowly walked closer, my pulse hammering. When I leaned over to look down, no one was there. The ladder was empty. For a few seconds, I just stood there, completely still, trying to make sense of it. Maybe whoever it was had climbed partway up and gone back down. Maybe I'd imagined it. Then, footsteps, rushing across the wooden walkway behind me. I spun around and caught a glimpse, just a shadow, a figure running past the windows on the far side of the lookout. That was all I needed. I grabbed the ladder and started climbing down as fast as I could, barely feeling my hands on the rungs. Every creak sounded like a gunshot in the silence. When I was halfway down, I glanced up and saw someone leaning over the railing above, looking down at me. I didn't stop. The second my boots hit the ground, I took off into the trees. My heart was pounding so hard, it felt like it filled my entire body. I don't even know how I managed to stay on course, but I did. Flashlight in one hand, GPS in the other, just running through the forest until the darkness began to thin and I saw the faint reflection of my car in the distance. I jumped in, locked the doors, and drove. I didn't look back, not once. To this day, I don't know who that person was, or if it was even just one person, but I do know this. If I hadn't grabbed my backpack when I woke up, I might not have made it out of there. This was in 2019, when I was 21. I was spending the summer at my parents' house and figured I'd go camping in the woods behind their backyard while I had the chance. It was a pretty impulsive idea. I just decided one morning that I'd pack my bag and head out for the night. I'd done it a bunch of times before, so this wasn't anything special. I told my parents where I was going, then left around 4 p.m. to find a good spot for the night. I walked for about an hour before finding an open patch that looked perfect. I set up my tent, cleared some space, and got a small fire going. The fading sunlight made everything feel calm and peaceful, exactly the kind of night I wanted. But it didn't take long for that calm to break. Just as the sun dipped behind the trees, I heard a voice, a man's voice, low and muttering. It echoed strangely through the woods, hard to tell which direction it came from. I should mention, these woods stretch for miles, completely wild and without trails, so running into someone there was basically impossible. I figured whoever it was would just pass by, but the voice kept going for 5 minutes straight, long enough to feel wrong. Eventually, I called out, just a simple hello. But before I even finished, the voice stopped. The forest went completely silent. I called out again, and nothing. That silence made my skin crawl. With maybe 20 minutes of daylight left, I decided to move campsites. No reason to sit there feeling watched all night. I packed up and headed deeper into the woods. After about 15 minutes of hiking, the light was fading fast, so I settled for a random spot surrounded by trees. By the time I finished setting up, night had fully fallen. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes every crack of a branch sound louder than it should. I built another small campfire and let its glow flicker across the trees. The warmth felt good, and roasting marshmallows always had a way of relaxing me. For a while it worked. The woods felt calm again, the air still. Hours passed. The fire burned lower, half as bright as before, when I heard the crunch of leaves behind me. It came from somewhere to my back left. I turned, scanning the darkness, but the sound stopped. I called out, not expecting much after what happened earlier. And then a man stepped out from the trees. He came from a completely different direction than where I was looking. "Didn't mean to scare you," he said, smiling as he walked right up and sat beside the fire. He stretched his hands toward the flames like it was his own camp. Can I help you?" "I think you're at the wrong campsite," I said. "No." That was all. I didn't know which part he was answering, but it was enough to make my stomach tighten. We sat there in tense silence, both staring at the fire. I finally blurted out the first thing that came to mind. "Were you the one I heard talking in the woods earlier?" He didn't look at me. His face just went blank. "Must have been someone else," he said, voice flat and cold. Before I could respond, a stick snapped behind me, from the same direction as before. My heart dropped. He wasn't alone. I turned back toward the fire, and he was staring right at me. I don't even remember if he was smiling or angry, just that his eyes were lifeless. I bolted. I grabbed my flashlight and sprinted into the trees. I heard one of them shout something, maybe to the other, and footsteps followed me for a few seconds before fading away. Growing up here, I knew the woods well enough to navigate by memory. I made it to the road, then back to my parents' house, heart pounding the whole way. They called 911. The next morning, I went back with the police. My campsite was completely gone. No tent, no fire pit, nothing. I don't know if that made it better or worse. Maybe they were just out to steal from me. Or maybe they had much worse plans. Either way, I never went back into those woods again.